Hello, everyone. I'm Esperanza Walsh, and this is Art from the Heart at St. Augustine's Church. Today, we're doing the session remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. And today, we are still in the topic of underpainting. So, we are going to create our artwork using a base layer, which we call an underpaint. And today, the underpaint base would be blue. And that is because we're doing a waterscape, and let me show you this. This is actually a photograph. Well, it's not just a photograph. It's an award-winning photograph by Dr. Jonathan Salvacion. I've asked him permission to allow us to use this for our class, and hopefully we give it the justice it deserves. So let's start. This is a rough sketch that I've made to plan the underpaint. Usually, well, when I actually do my regular paintings, I do not do any such sketch. I apply the underpaint directly, and it is the one acting as the sketch. But since most of you are not familiar with this technique yet, I want to show you how it is done and how you can plan it step by step. So, based on the image, we have this sketch, and the lower part here would be this green line over here. The upper part would be this bit, which is this blue line. And as we can see, we can create an imaginary triangle here. That's the pink lines, which can serve as markers. So in this case, I've done this plan, and as you can see, covering the green line, there are some orange crisscross drawing, and that's how I would plan to paint water on it first. So everything with this orange area here, 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 and here, before I paint anything, be it underpaint or highlights or layers or details, I would need to paint water before I do it. And that is to achieve the goal that I have in mind. So we start with the blue area. So the first thing we have to do, I'm sorry, we start with the green area. The first thing we have to do is to paint it with water, because I did mark it with that orange line there. And I think my brush needs a little bit of rinsing. Let me just make sure it's clean. Okay, it is clean. Now let me go back. So this area, yes, it's just clean water. Okay, so this is now painted with water. And now I will paint our base, which is blue. So when we paint our base layer for the underpaint, it has to be real dilute, really light, but enough for us to see what we are planning to do on the page. Okay, and then the next bit, after doing the bottom, would be to paint this part on top with blue, which is the underpaint. And as we can see here, there's this area which is painted with water. So I am going to paint this area with water. It doesn't have to be exactly as how I sketched it, but just roughly, so that when the paint disperses on the paper, it would have that certain softness, that certain effect that we need to achieve the goal we want. Okay, so I need to paint it in that same shape. Okay. From here, you can already start seeing what I'm trying to achieve. Because if we didn't paint it with water, we would see this line, which is blue and white. So there's a line separating the two. And here, it's like a smooth transition because of the water. So the next thing we are doing would be to paint some blue paint here in this area. Okay, so that would be here and also here. And that's within the imaginary triangle. So some blue paint over there. Just like that one. And then there's this one. Perfect. So we have those two now within the imaginary triangle. Okay. And then on this side, on the left, we have to paint some as well. But in this side, we need to paint it with water before we do anything. So I'm just painting some water here. And then I paint it with the blue underpaint. And it's okay if it touches each other, if it overlaps, that's fine. But the water will change how the paint appears. So it's an absolute must. Now, following that, okay, we're going to put a light touch of brown just to mark where the rocks are going to be. And just like the blue underpaint, this brown underpaint should be very light. So there's my paint. Again, these are just markers. Oh, beautiful. So that's the blue rock, the brown rock. And then we're going to paint another one here. Oops, that's a bit dark, but we can adjust that later on. That's all right. And then we're going to paint the smaller ones. And again, smaller set here. Yes, and as you can see, the water is affecting how the paint moves on the paper. Okay. Okay, though I mentioned earlier that we are painting a photograph, we are not creating a photograph. So that means that it's not, I'm not expecting a realistic, a very realistic output, but more of an impressionist output from this artwork. However, if you would like to make it more realistic, we can do that as well. But that would take a little bit more time, more layers because of more details. Okay, so let me just make some space here before it completely dries. And here as well. Okay, so now we have all our markers. The next thing to do is to actually paint our art piece. And to do that, we have to determine the color of the water first. So the next layer would be a mixture of blue and green. Okay, let me just make some here. This earlier is a mixture of blue and green, but this, even if I add water to it, it won't be enough. So I would need to add more blue paint and the green paint to it. Okay, this is now too green, so I need to add more blue. Okay, and just some water. And this is our underpaint earlier, which is very dilute. So I'm going to add that into this one. And then I am going to paint the area first, which are lighter. So that should be this area. Well, I will be painting all of it, but what I meant is, when I paint this would be lighter, and this darker area would require another layer to darken it a little bit more. Okay, so I am doing that now, just painting it with the mixture of blue and green paint in an X manner. So it has to be like an X to make the water look more dynamic. We did this in our previous activity. Oh, isn't that beautiful? So here we put some paint as well in between the rocks. And here as well. And this area as well. Again, we see the difference in effect when there is water painted on the paper. Okay. Okay. Now for this area, I have to soften the effect of this paint to make it look more natural and flowing. Okay, and here I just continue. Oh dear. Okay, I forgot about this area. We need to paint it with water, as I've mentioned, so that it would look soft. So I have to lift some of the paint. Sorry about that. Okay, that's perfect. And then we just can continue doing that. And then here as well. Wow, that's beautiful. I can see the water. Now, we need to darken this a bit. So what I'm gonna do is put some of the colors in this well, into the well with the blue paint, and just add some green to it, just to make it darker. So it's basically the same color, but a different hue, a darker one, same proportion of paint. Now to make it even darker, I will add some black into it, but just a little bit. Again, black will be very overwhelming if it's too much. And I need to test the paint first before I can use it. Okay, I think that is perfect. So, and yes, I do test all the paint first before I use it on the paper. That is to make sure that the color I will be using would be the color I would want to use. Okay, so here I'm still doing this in an X manner. There we go. And here we need it to be a little darker in this area. Also here. Okay, we're doing pretty well. Okay, now as you can see, some areas still show the brushstroke, areas which are not supposed to show them, like here. So I'm just gonna paint this with water, just to make the transition, the gradient transition smoothly, just like in this area. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. Okay, that's wonderful. And also here. Okay, and it's okay to have white spaces on it. That's fine. It's just going to show us the reflection of light from the sun. So here we have those white spaces as well. That's fine. Okay, now it's time to paint the rocks. So we're painting our rocks with brown. So I am using burnt umber. Okay. I think I need a bit more paint. There we go. And I'm painting this wet on dry. And the reason is I want the shape to show, you know, I want the shape to look like, I want the shape to show the lines and also the brush strokes. So if I do wet on dry, it will not flow over because the substrate is dry. Okay. And just paint it. Okay. Try to paint it with a certain circular motion using your brush, and that is so that you can create some sort of a texture on the paper using a visual texture using the paint. Okay, here we go. We're doing it on the other rock. Okay, for this one, I would like to make this edges a bit softer in appearance. So again, smooth transition, but only in this area. For the rest, I would like to see the lines in the brush strokes. And this is just one layer for now. Later on, we're going to put another layer. Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. And then more rocks. And then more rocks. Okay, again, this is not exactly as in the photograph, but we are mindful that there are rocks and in certain areas, there's one or two smaller ones. So we are mindful of that, but we're not painting it exactly the same. But if we wish to, we could. But for this instance, we're not, because we're trying to simplify it. What we're trying to capture is that general image of that waterscape. Okay, so we now have brown rocks. I'm gonna put another layer, but for this other layer, I'm just going to paint certain parts of the rock to make them lighter or darker. And here, let me just paint some brown here. And I will just let it mix with the water. Yes. Okay, and this is supposed to appear like the rocks under the water. There we go. And now we have to be mindful of where the light is coming from. So in my earlier class, we did this one, and we assumed that the light is coming from this area. So I am going to do the same thing. I am going to assume that the light is coming from this area over here, going that way. So that means the shadow will be in this side. Okay, and to create those shadows and dimensions, I am going to use black paint. Again, I'm painting most of this wet on dry, but in certain areas like this one, it's going to be wet on wet. Again, this would depend on the effect that I would like to achieve. Okay, there we go. Here. Okay, and here as well. So we're just putting some highlights to give it dimension so that when we look at it from afar, it looks like some parts of the rocks are closer to us than the rest of it. Okay, we're getting there. And I think I just damaged this part over here. So I would need to repair that immediately. Okay, so I'm just getting a wet brush and just painting it in an X manner. Okay, and okay, repaired. Whew, that was scary. Never leave your brush dipped in the water that way because it's going to damage the bristles. Always make sure that you rinse it. After rinsing, leave it in an upright manner or lay it down on the table. So either way, as long as no pressure is exerted on the brush itself. Okay, now let me just go back to painting the shadow and the highlights on the rock. There we go. We're doing very well and very quickly. Okay, if we're doing a more realistic painting rather than impressionist, I would recommend that you do the actual sketch so that all the details are marked properly so that you don't miss anything. Now, once you're used to making realistic paintings, you can actually make them with lesser details in the sketch. So it's about practice. Okay, just softening the transition. Maybe a little bit over there. And then here as well. And then I need to soften this bit because I think there are too much brush strokes that can be seen and they shouldn't be. Sometimes brush strokes are necessary to complete the art piece. but sometimes they shouldn't um, appear to be there. So it depends on what we need to create the art piece. Okay. Okay. I am very happy with what we have. Let me just turn it around. Oh, that's very nice. However, I think we need more black paint in this part. Okay, in this part in particular, because I don't see enough details that makes the rock look more three-dimensional. So that is the goal. It's actually to make the rock look more three-dimensional. And I need to do that for this one as well. This looks very nice. It looks very three-dimensional. So this rocks here at the back has to have the same effect as this one. Okay, let me just turn it around so I can see it. Oh, very nice. Let me extend that a bit there. Yes, it's a bit difficult to do it when I cannot really see it. So I have to turn it around and let it face me. Okay, there we go. And then I'm just gonna paint a little bit of water. Okay. Now, that looks much better, but I have to do it in this area as well, so I have to turn this paper around again. Mhm. Oops. Okay. So I think we've done a good job so far. Now, this area, I think, needs a little more of the blue paint. Okay. The blue and green paint mixture. So we've done that. And this area is now finished. Now we have to go to the bottom. So for this one, we have to paint this line with water, just clean water, so that the transition is smoother. And then we will paint it with light green, more of yellow green. Uh, this is achieved by adding yellow ochre to our green paint. Okay. And if there's too much paint, we can lift it either with our brush or with kitchen towel itself. So If I feel that it's too much water, I can do that. Okay, now the next bit, I am going to paint some areas of this land with the darker green. Lovely. And then I'm gonna get some yellow ochre, and just like drawing, I'm gonna paint something like lines here in that transition. The group of lines, these are going to be like grass growing in this part of the land. And then let me get some dark green paint. I'm gonna paint some lines in between those yellow ones. Okay, so we see those lines. Now I'm just gonna get some regular green paint and just paint horizontal strokes. That's wet on wet to about half of those lines we initially painted on the edge. Wow, that is getting better. It's beautiful. So now I'm going to get even darker paint and then just make horizontal strokes. Again, this will be wet and wet. Really dark green. Yes, and this dark green is made not just by adding blue into the mixture, but also adding a little bit of black to make it really dark. Okay, so now I am going to turn the painting and let it face me so I can determine whether or not I need to add some more paint, put more layers, and yes, I do, because based on this area seems to be white. It looks more like a part of the beach than the water. So I need to paint some more here. And it's okay if cauliflowers. Okay. This is one of the application where when you get blooms or cauliflowers with your paint, it just adds to the beauty of the art piece. It doesn't damage it. There are situations when it's an absolute no-no. So in this case, you can use it to enhance the appearance of your art piece. So I'm gonna turn it around again so I can see if I have achieved what I want to achieve. And you know what? I have. Oh, let me just make a slight correction here. Okay, so now all I have to do is to let this art piece dry and my version of the landscape, oh, waterscape rather. Oops, hope I didn't damage that. Um, my version of the seascape, waterscape, sorry. My version of the waterscape is now ready. So there's my water, those are all water, the rocks, the land with some grass growing on it, and the water spray. So it's all here. Now again, I just have to let it dry and it's good to go. So I hope you enjoyed this session and thank you so much. Next week, we will be doing more, perhaps something different, maybe paint the red sherbet. We will see. But again, it would apply the techniques that we have learned for this whole month. Okay, thank you so much and have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye.